This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Good morning, I'm Justin Warmoth. Florida's primary election is nearly a month away, and one of, if not the most competitive races is for District 10. 18 total candidates, 10 on the Democratic side, are vying to succeed Congresswoman Val Demings. It is a crowded and diverse field that includes a 25-year-old political newcomer who, if elected, could become the first Gen Z member of Congress. I sat down with Maxwell Alejandro Frost to learn more about his background and where he stands on key political issues. Introduce yourself to the voters of District 10, your background, and why you decided to run for Congress.
100%. Hello, everybody. My name is Maxwell Alejandro Frost. I was born and raised right here in Orlando, Florida. And the reason why I decided to run actually goes back 10 years. It's my call to action. The reason I'm running as an organizer, I believe that our story is the most powerful tool that we have. So my story starts 10 years ago. I went to the Osceola County School for the Arts next to Gatorland, and I studied jazz drums there. Before every jazz band concert, my best friends and I would go across the street to this restaurant and load up on a bunch of junk food. And I remember the night specifically because we were there eating, and there was a silence that fell across the entire restaurant. We all looked up at the television screens and saw that somebody walked into an elementary school in Newtown, Connecticut, and murdered 20 children and 6 teachers. Seeing that changed my life. I couldn't play right that night at the show. I kept thinking about it. I went to Washington, D.C. for the memorial that was going on, and it was there that I had a specific moment that completely changed everything for me. It was after the memorial, and all of the kids from Sandy Hook were just sitting around a pool, kind of wading their feet in the water, and then there was Maxwell Frost from Florida. And across from me was a guy named Matthew Soto. Matthew's sister, Vicky, was a teacher at Sandy Hook, and when she heard the gunshots, she hid her children in the closets and the cabinets to save their lives, and she was murdered that day. And sitting across from Matthew, he was 16 at the time, seeing him cry, seeing a 16-year-old with the demeanor of a 60-year-old, crying over his sister who was murdered for going to school, it changed my life. I went straight back to my hotel room. I remember calling my mother because she's a teacher. She actually retires next year. I remember thinking about my little sister. And I dedicated my life to fighting for a world where no one has to feel the way I saw Matthew feel that night. And that's what changed everything for me. I started working in politics straight out of high school, full-time. Worked on different campaigns across the state, went to work for the American Civil Liberties Union for multiple years at the state and national level, was the youngest person to work there at the national level. And I got hired as the national organizing director of March for Our Lives, the movement that came after the shooting that happened in Parkland, Florida, where we learned how to use our voices and use people power to make a difference in the country. And now I'm here running for Congress.
So you've been waiting for this moment. You're 25 years old.
Yes.
So since then, you've been waiting to turn 25 so you can run for Congress, right? I mean,
not necessarily.
What do you tell people who might be saying, listen, experience matters, especially for Congress? I know you hear that from critics, right? What would you tell them about your age and whether or not that factors into it?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I actually haven't been waiting. This was a decision I made last year. I'm asked by some organizers to run. But I would say this, experience does matter. Different types of experiences, and that's what we need in Congress. I have experience of 10 years being an organizer, working with folks that I disagree with, working with folks that I agree with to make a difference in the country. From being on the front lines of Amendment 4 with the ACLU of Florida, where we got voting rights to over 1.6 million people, to working with the White House when I was at March for Our Lives to secure $5 billion for community violence intervention and Build Back Better, to working with President Biden and being able to push him to be someone who rejects the Hyde Amendment, and now he's for expanding abortion access to tons of Americans. That's something that I did at the ACLU. So yes, experience matters, but I think there's a typical caricature of the experience we look for in our candidates. And in a country like ours, we need a Congress that looks like the country in terms of race, in terms of age, but also experience. I believe we need more organizers in Congress. We live in some very challenging times right now. Faith in our democracy is eroding. And we need folks who come up there with fresh ideas, fresh faces, and a fresh perspective, and a different way of going about things. And I believe I'm that person in this race.
If you're elected, you would be the first of many, perhaps, or just the first Gen Z member of Congress. What does that mean to you, and why is that so important?
Yeah, well, it's not the reason I'm running, right? I'm not running for a record or anything like that, but it is important to the story because what we know is that Congress skews a lot older right now. And I'm not saying there shouldn't be older folks in Congress. We need that diversity, but what we're missing are those younger voices. And it's not that, typically folks think that young people care about different issues. I actually disagree. I think we all care about the same issues. We just look at them through a different lens and think about them in a little bit of a different way. And I think it's important that we have that perspective in Congress when we're talking about things like climate change and the climate crisis. We live in ground zero for that here in Florida. We need someone who's going to go with an urgency, someone who knows that the cost of not doing anything is far greater than the cost of taking bold action now, not footing the bill to the next generation, my children, our grandchildren. And that energy, that type of urgency, I think is needed in Congress, and that's why I think it's important we get Gen Z and future generations in Congress as well.
You mentioned basically platform and where politicians, especially in the Democratic side, stand. I mean, your campaign website, Medicare for All, ending gun violence, fighting climate change, reducing mass incarceration, improving transportation, and the affordable housing crisis, all things that we have heard and all things that we have heard from the candidates in District 10. So what separates your vision for those from the other candidates in the race?
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of it, well, I would say our platform, what it does is looks at the needs of our community and figures out how can we provide a North Star and bold solutions that can materially change people's lives. And that's the difference, I would say, is we take a holistic approach to policy. And what they want us to do is they want us to think about gun violence and transportation and climate change in separate silos. But what we know to be true is that when people have health care, when people have a dignified wage, they're represented by a union, they're less likely to use a gun to solve their problem. And that ends gun violence. It's not typically that same legislation we think of, but that's the way we need to be thinking about it, and that's the way I think about it, and what I would say puts me in a different position than the other candidates in this race. I take that holistic approach, and it's for that reason that we are, I'm the only campaign, I'm the only candidate in this race that has received endorsements from current members of Congress. And I think that says a lot in a race where I'm a young guy. We have a state legislator, we have 2 former members of Congress, and people like Congressman Jamie Raskin, Senator Elizabeth Warren have seen this field and said, send us Maxwell Frost to work with us on protecting our democracy and providing for the American people.
I know you mentioned a holistic approach and how all of these issues are connected in some way, shape, or form. But if there's one that you in particular feel like is the most pressing that's facing our country right now, what would you say that is?
It's hard to pick one in these days, with inflation and prices being high. People, over 60% of the people in our district can't afford an unexpected $300 bill tomorrow. So there's a lot going on. I'll say personally, and being a good member of Congress is about being able to do multiple things at the same time. But personally for me, gun violence is something that is the reason why I'm in this work. It's impacted me personally as a survivor of gun violence.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, for sure.
What happened?
Yeah, so it was here in downtown Orlando in 2016, and I was just out with some friends on Halloween, and there was 2 guys who were having an argument, and one guy, I was right next to them, pulled out a gun and started shooting him. And I remember my friend laying on the floor and being shocked, and she couldn't move, and we had to grab her and run with her. And to be honest, for many years, I never counted myself as a survivor. I think most people think of survivor of gun violence and think of mass shootings. But as someone who's been in this work for 10 years, I remember just a few years ago sitting in a room with a bunch of survivors and people telling their stories. And when we went around, someone said, I'm a survivor because I tried to take my life with a gun and it didn't work. And I'm here, I've survived gun violence. The next person, I'm someone who, I was in a club one night and there was a shooting and we had to run out. We couldn't get out, and we made our way out, and I'm a survivor of gun violence. It manifests itself in different ways. And it was just recently that I said, wow, we survived the shooting that night. And the sad thing about it is there's so many folks who can relate to that. We have 100 people who die a day due to gun violence in this country, 200 more that are shot, and hundreds more that survive shootings on a daily basis. That's not the look of a good country, and we need to end that crisis now and believe that that is something we can do. Even in a bipartisan way, we saw the legislation that just passed and that the president signed. It's not everything we need, but it's a great first step.
Coming up, Frost will discuss his ideal gun control legislation, plus what he says he'll do in Congress when it comes to reproductive rights. Stay with us.
This is The Weekly on ClickOrlando.com with Justin Warmoth.
Welcome back. Our guest this morning is 25-year-old Maxwell Alejandro Frost, one of 10 Democrats running for Florida's 10th congressional district. We pick up the conversation where we left off, on the topic of gun control. What's ideal for you in a best case scenario when it comes to gun legislation in America? What does that look like?
Yeah, well, I think we have to look at it in multiple ways, right? So the first part is the regulation of guns themselves. And I believe that isn't the end-all be-all, but it's important. We think about things like extreme risk protection orders. Other people know them as red flag laws, which ours here, it's been used over 7,000 times. And it's actually kind of a weak red flag law. We could expand it and make it even better. Imagine how many lives that saves. So red flag laws, ERPOs are important. Ensuring that we have universal background checks. We still don't have that in the country. The majority of gun owners agree with it, the majority of NRA members agree with it, and obviously the majority of Democrats. So those are two things that I think we can get done in a quick way. The next part of this is figuring out how do we stop gun violence before it even happens, proactive solutions. This is what I fought for in Build Back Better with securing $5 billion for community violence intervention. For folks who don't know what that is, this is evidence-based programs that are done at the community level that end gun violence before it even happens. It manifests itself in different ways, from clergy taking part in programs, after-school programs that take kids off the streets and give them something to do, to folks who actually walk around the streets and hear about when gun violence is going to happen and they intervene before it stops. They're called violence interrupters. And these are things that are successful across the country. We don't necessarily have it here in Orlando in a big way. And as a member of Congress, I'm going to be dedicated to ensuring that we get those funds here because we deserve them. And we deserve to have solutions in our community that end gun violence before it happens.
Republicans would say that the frequency of mass shootings in this country is a direct result of mental health issues and a crisis on the mental health side of things, and not because of gun ownership and guns in general, especially high-powered rifles and those sorts of weapons. What do you make of that take on the situation that this country is currently facing?
That's valid. And it's a part of it. Healthcare is a part of gun violence, 110%. But what we can't do is use that point to ignore everything else. That's not the way that we solve this problem. So I say yes, mental health is a big part of it. But for folks who don't know, I think a lot of times we might think people with mental health issues, which I would argue that the majority of the country has mental health issues, we need to work to destigmatize that. But folks who have serious mental health conditions, statistically speaking, are actually more likely to be the victim of gun violence in this country, not the ones that commit the gun violence. So these are things, I agree, we need to look at it, we need to take a step back, and like I said before, Justin, look at this holistically and figure out how can different pieces of legislation work together. Medicare for All, I argue, will help end gun violence. Ensuring that people have a livable wage will help end gun violence. It's creating a world where people don't feel the need to use a gun to solve their problems.
And listen, I know that you have a ton of platforms and issues that you would like to talk about. Because of time constraints, we got to focus on a few.
Yeah, for sure.
But I want to move to reproductive rights in this country and the overturning of Roe versus Wade, and what you promise constituents if you do get elected, what you will do in Congress to ensure that their reproductive rights are there.
Well, folks will know is they'll have a fighter, and that's what we need in this time, right? We need someone who's going to fight, yes, in Washington, D.C., but also here on the ground. And I'm proud to have been present at many of the demonstrations, rallies, and direct actions that have been going on. We need to make our voices heard. Over half of our population has lost one of their most intimate, what I call human rights. And so the anger and the righteous love that comes out of that needs to be real, and that's what they'll get with me. As far as legislation is concerned, there are things we need to do immediately and fight for. Number one, we need to codify Roe versus Wade into law. I'm very happy that the House, I think today or in the next few days, will be taking up that vote and hoping it passes with overwhelming numbers to show the country that the House of Representatives stands with folks who can have an abortion, women and people in this country. The other thing we need to do is we need to look at the Supreme Court. We need to add more justices. I support the Judiciary Act of 2021, sponsored by Congressman Mondier Jones, who I'm also incredibly honored to have the endorsement of in this race. And it adds 4 new Supreme Court justices to the Supreme Court. Some folks watching at home, I say, Maxwell, well, that's packing the Supreme Court. I would argue that it's unpacking the Supreme Court. The person who packed the Supreme Court was Donald Trump. Well, now we have to do the work as the United States Congress to unpack it and make it look like America. Right now, it doesn't. And that's why we're having these, the horrible ruling with the EPA, horrible ruling on guns, horrible, tragic ruling on abortion rights. And in the concurring opinion, we saw that they're going to look at gay marriage next. They're going to look at same-sex marriage. They're going to look at contraception. It's a slippery slope, and we have to make sure that we do everything we can as a Congress and as the representative of the people to unpack that court. And these are the things I think that can get us there.
A lot of political experts are expecting Congress to be red come the midterms, after the midterms are over. Your district, the likely winner of the Democratic primary, will eventually go to Congress. So let's play hypothetical here. Working in a Republican-controlled Congress as a Democrat, as a newly elected fresh Democrat, freshman Democrat, are you prepared for that and being able to not necessarily get some of the things that you would like to get done?
Yeah, and the first thing I'll say is once we win this primary, it is my goal to travel up and down this state and even help across the country to make sure that we keep our majority. And that's something I'm dedicated to doing, being a power builder. We can't just have members of Congress who go to D.C., come back, and that's it. We need members here, especially in the Democratic Party, that are willing to fight and put themselves on the line to help grow our majority so we can actually deliver for the American people. That's what real governing needs to be about, being very involved. So that's the first piece. But in the case that we do lose the House, which the polling is saying that's what will happen, I am prepared for that. And I've been working in these environments for my entire career, from working at March for Our Lives. I remember being on the tour with the founders when we traveled across Florida and up and down the South and being trailed and followed by gun advocates who were armed. They would carry AR-15s, follow our bus everywhere we went, and just stand there with their guns. And we had conversations with those people. Right? We would sit down and talk with them about where's the middle ground. That was difficult, but taught me early on that it's important to have those conversations, and we can get things done when we speak with one another. Or when Virginia was happening and they passed sweeping gun reform. Myself and a bunch of other students that were from March for Our Lives, we slept overnight in the Virginia State Capitol because there were tens of thousands of armed supremacists kind of around the Capitol. And we slept there overnight so we wouldn't have to walk through them because we had received death threats. And we still spoke with those folks after that long day of lobbying, and we were able to push for sweeping gun reform. I say that to say being in the minority is not something that's new to me, not something that's new to my identity as a Black Afro-Latino in this country. It's something that's not new to my work as a gun violence prevention organizer and someone who's been doing this work.
Now, remember, Florida is a closed primary state, so to vote for specific races like District 10, you need to be a member of that political party. The deadline to register or update your voter information ahead of next month's election is a week from tomorrow. That's July 25th. We have a full breakdown on clickorlando.com/weekly. I'm Justin Mormith. Hope you have a great Sunday.